Hi and welcome to this new DigiPrint Supplies webinar entitled What Nozzle Tests Are Really Telling You. And the reason why we are doing this webinar is because we noticed on our Zendesk support website that people sometimes get confused about what they see on their nozzle tests, and they don't always quite understand what it tells them about their printer and what is really going on with their printer. For people new to our DigiPrint Supplies webinars, as usual, the chat window will be opened at the end of the session, so you can ask your questions at the end of the session. And the entire webinar will be available again for offline viewing on our Zendesk support website. Now, you see that I have put up a poll up there. If you can answer the simple question, do you replace your printheads yourself? It's just out of my interest, but it also helps us understand our customers better than we already do today. Okay, so I'll just end the voting and close the survey, because I'm going to share my screen with you guys so we can start the presentation and the explanation. Just a little second. Here we go. So what your nozzle tests are really telling you. And before I start, I would like to point out a common mistake that is often made. You usually print a nozzle test either after you have some trouble printing, you see lines or half your print is missing, or something is wrong with the image or the graphic that you're printing, so you stop the printing and you do a nozzle test. Or you do it after you replace the print head, or you do it in the morning. You start up your printer, you do a normal cleaning, you print a nozzle test to see if it's in good condition, and if it is, you start printing. When you print a nozzle test because you see that there's something wrong with your print, you should always print 2 nozzle tests. We'll see later along the session why you should print 2 nozzle tests. Okay, so let's have a look at a typical flow of a large format printer. And today we're concentrating on large format printers, not so much super wide printers. And we also concentrate on solvent printers, but a lot of that, what we're going to discuss today, is the same for aqueous printers or even UV printers. So a typical flow in a printer: you've got your print head, there's a damper sitting on it, it gets ink from your ink cartridge. Underneath your print head, there's a cap top with a pump, and there's a wiper to the side. They all have their own function, and we'll look at some of them in detail, because they play a role in the condition of your print head nozzles. So let's have a look at the damper. It has a function that is very important in your printer. It holds ink. It's like a container. It has ink sitting there waiting to be jetted by the print head. It dispenses ink towards the print head. It collects a very small amount of air. If there's too much air, you'll get into trouble. And it prevents particles from entering the head. Now, in order to do that, it has this little filter over here, okay? And this actually acts as a one-way valve, so ink can come out, but not back in, all right? And any damper works like this. And any print head, whether it is in large format or super wide, has some form of a damper, often integrated into the print head when we talk about cycle print heads, for instance. But even more often, it's a separate part that sits on top of your print head. Now, the mesh filter, which is there to filter your ink and prevent small particles from entering the head and blocking nozzles, can get clogged. And if it's half clogged, you will start to see that ink doesn't flow fast enough to your print head anymore. And that will already result in missing nozzles. So this damper is a consumable, all right? And you should replace it, depending on how much you print, every 3 to 6 months, okay? Now, also important, is the type of ink we use. And we're talking Solvent Ink today. And the composition of Solvent Ink, it has pigments, of course, otherwise you wouldn't have much color. It has resin, it has an oil or water-based co-solvents, plasticizers, and some elements typical for the ink manufacturer, which is usually a secret, and what makes their ink their ink. Now, the one we're concentrating on is the resin. And the resin is like a liquid plastic that bounds with a pigment, okay? And when it is exposed to heat, it will dry out. So you get solid colors on your media. Now, typical for solvent inks is that it will dry out even if you don't heat it. If you just take enough time, the resin will get hard, will get solid. And that's the main reason why on a solvent printer, you shouldn't keep your printer 2 weeks on the side without printing and leaving ink in the printhead. And it also means that any part that is involved in cleaning your printhead, like a cap top or a wiper, should be kept clean, especially on a cap top. There's a rubber side here, right? That should be kept clean and flexible. If it's not clean or not flexible anymore, it won't seal your head. And if it doesn't seal your head, the head will dry out even faster, and you don't get proper suction when you do a maintenance cycle on your printer. So very important to keep both the wiper and the cap top in good condition. And again, both the wiper and the cap top on a solvent printer, together with a damper, are actually consumables. Important to know about solvent ink, it's not a solution. It's a colloidal suspension. So it means that the elements inside the solvent ink do not mingle with each other, do not dissolve each other, okay? We talked about the resin and that you need to keep your capping station moist. So in the evening, when you're done printing, put 2 drops of cleaning liquid on your capping station. Make sure that the rubber on the sides is cleaned. You use a swab for that and some cleaning liquids, and then it should be fine, okay? Little word on printing conditions. Temperature, ideally, for solvent printers should be between 20 and 25 degrees, and if it's not printing, 18, and humidity somewhere between 30 and 40%. Now, the reason for that, especially with the temperature, if your temperature is too low, if you go way below 20 degrees while printing, the ink becomes thicker. And if it's too high, it becomes thinner. So if the ink, the solvent inks become thicker, it's much harder to go through the damper in your printhead. And you will start seeing lines in your prints. And when you print a nozzle test, you will see some missing nozzles. If it comes thinner, the result will be that you start to see ink pooling on your nozzle face of the face of your printhead. This is what we call the nozzle face. A little word on that later. And of course, there's the humidity. If that is too low, then all parts involved, capping head, but also wiper, they will dry out too fast. So keep your printing conditions stable, especially during production of the printer. Okay, so when your printhead is clogged, and what we mean with clogged is that one or more of the nozzles are blocked and can't disperse ink anymore, then the parts involved beside the printhead itself are your dampers, your wipers, your pump, and your capping station. I could have added things like the ink cartridge and the ink lines, but that is so rare that we'll concentrate on these 5 to start. Now, this particular printhead, for instance, it's a nephew of the very popular Epson DX5. It actually has the same technology. It just has a different type of manifold. And if we open that up, this is just a manifold. So the reason why these are so popular is because they're multi-channel heads. So there's 8 channels. I don't know if you can see this. There's like 8 little holes. You have the idea that there's 10, but there's only 8. These 2 here on the top, they don't play a role. So it's a multi-channel head, and it means it can print up to 8 different colors with this one head. Now, for the printer manufacturer, that means that they don't need to take care of alignment between different jetpacks or heads. The alignment is already done on the head. That's why these are so popular for large format printers. And you can find them everywhere. They have some heads in Roland, Namaki, Muto, but also in a lot of other brands of printers. Okay. Now, this particular head has 8 channels, so it has 8 rows of nozzles, and every row has 180 nozzles, and one nozzle is 108 microns. That's 0.10 millimeter for one nozzle. Okay, so that's very small. That's why you need to keep your damper in good condition. If, for instance, the damper filter doesn't do a proper job and you get too much particles in here, you're gonna get plugged nozzles. If the capping station is dirty and there's ink on the sides of the rubber, or the wiper is dirty, it will just wipe half-dried ink into your nozzles, and I can assure you that a couple of hours later, that will be completely dried and the nozzle will be clogged. So it's very precise and fragile technology, and you should treat it that way. Right, so let's have a look on some of the nozzle out scenarios I prepared for you guys. And by the way, if you want to know more about printheads and how they work and what different types of technologies are available, I would advise you this excellent book that we had written and participated in. And it's available on our website or on Amazon. It explains a lot about printheads, and I'm sure you can find it very useful. So let's have a look at the first nozzle out scenario. It's always a nozzle test, a normal cleaning, and a second nozzle test. And that's what I meant when I said you should never print just one nozzle test. If you have a problem during printing, if you see banding, if you see like a half-eaten image, or your print is simply not like it should be, print a nozzle test, do normal cleaning, print it again, and then look at it. And this first example here, we call that an unstable nozzle out. So there's some nozzles missing in the first nozzle test here, which is actually just a little part of one color of the nozzle test. And we do normal cleaning, and we still have nozzles out, but they're in a different position. Okay, so that means that the nozzles itself are not blocked. There's something else going on. And this particular nozzle out scenario almost always indicates the presence of air in the ink delivery system. So there might be air bubbles in the ink line, which means that the valve on your ink cartridge isn't working like it's supposed to be. Might be a completely clogged damper. That's possible as well. The wiper rubber blade might be rounded and not sharp enough anymore. So when it wipes over the head, it actually introduces some air into the head, or the wiper rubber blade has gelled or dried ink on it. Gelled ink is different from dried ink in that it is a combination of ink and cleaning liquids. So it's exactly what the name says, gelled. It's not really solid yet, but it's like a paste. Okay. So these are the areas that you should look at on your printer: the ink lines, the damper, and the wiper when you got something like this. Okay. And how do you get the air out? Well, to get the air out of the printhead, I would use a printhead priming kit like this, which is a syringe, some tubing, and a matching damper. You can use the same, if you disconnect it here, you can use the same to connect it to your ink line. So you disconnect the ink line from a damper, you connect this, and you pull ink from the ink cartridge until you see no more air and bubbles into the syringe. So that will make your ink lines coming from the ink cartridge air-free. Of course, if you have half an hour later, again, air or a nozzle test like this and air bubbles in your ink lines, then you need to check the valve on your ink cartridge, or maybe possibly a leak in the ink lines, but believe me, you would see that on other areas in your printer as well. There would be pools of ink inside the frame of your printer, or sometimes even on the floor, depending on how the printer is built. So unstable nozzle out. Now, its cousin, the stable nozzle out, you do a nozzle test, and you have some nozzles missing. You do a normal cleaning, you do a nozzle test again, and the same nozzles are still missing. Now, that's typical example of nozzles that are blocked, that are clogged. And most of the time, it's dust, debris, or dried ink in the printhead. Okay? It might be a damaged printhead nozzle face due to head strike, for instance. You were printing on vinyl, and the head just ran into the vinyl curled up under the head and damaged the nozzles. Or the head cap is too high. So the distance between your media and your printhead is just too high. Okay? But in 95% of the cases, it's just dried ink in the printhead. You left it 3 days with non-cleaned, non-sealing cap, and with ink still in the printhead, for instance, and it just dried. It was a hot day, etc., etc. So stable nozzle out. Look at your printhead. You don't need to look at any other parts when you have a stable nozzle out scenario. Multiple adjacent missing nozzles. So there's a big gap in your nozzle test, and that doesn't change with a normal cleaning. All right. So it's related to the first scenario that we saw. In that respect, that it is also air related. But instead of some air in your ink line stamper or your ink delivery system, there's a lot of air in this particular case coming from the ink lines. So again, the valve of the ink cartridge might be involved, or coming from the cap rubber, or coming also from an insufficient pump. If your pump isn't working correctly anymore, then it doesn't create a decent vacuum underneath the printhead with a cap, and air can be introduced in the head. It just flows in the other direction. So big holes in your nozzle test, they can move around as well. And given the example here of a first one normal cleaning and a second one, and the second one is still the same, sometimes it can move around as well. For one, mixed color. Right? You print your nozzle test, and in the cyan, you see that some of the nozzles are in a different color, or half of that nozzle line printed by that particular nozzle is half the color. You do normal cleaning, and it stays the same, or the color moves in a different place, but you still have mixed color. So that's ink mist on the printhead nozzle face most of the time. So there's just ink mixed on the nozzle face. All right. It might be that the wiper blade is dirty or rounded or not sharp enough anymore. Actually, a wiper blade is something that you should replace more often than 6 months. It's the only part that comes in contact with the printhead. So you should not be cheap on that and replace it every 2 or 3 months. This cap, it doesn't touch your printhead. When you put it on your printhead, like this, it's only the rubber touching the printhead, making a perfect seal. But the foam inside does not touch your printhead. So only the wiper touches your printhead. Number 5, mixed color 2. There's actually a large portion of your nozzle test that is printed in a different color. That's actually not mixing of ink on the nozzle face. It's something that is completely wrong in your printer. For instance, 2 ink lines that are mixed on the same cap rubber, not on this particular one, but for instance, when you have DX4 heads in your printer, where you have more than one printhead and as a result more than one cap rubber or cap top. And it is possible that two ink lines actually mix their ink on the same cap rubber. Or it might be that both the wiper and the cap are dirty. But in this case, in this particular case, they are very dirty. Right, nozzle deflection. So you print your nozzle test and you see that the nozzles are not printed in a nice straight line. They're like a bit all over the place. You do a normal cleaning and then the second nozzle test looks okay. In most cases, when a nozzle on a printhead is half blocked, it will deflect the ink drop coming out of it. So that happens also during a nozzle test. When you do a normal cleaning, so this is not dried ink, it's just dust or something blocking the nozzle halfway. Well, it might be dried ink, but I'll come back to that later. So if it's dust or debris and you do a normal cleaning, that is just washed away, and then you get a second good nozzle test. It might also be the data cable that is malfunctioning, but in this particular case, not all the time. If you have the first one, the bad one here, and do a normal cleaning, and the second one is still looking like this, then your data cable needs to be replaced. And you have, instead of dust or debris blocking a nozzle half, you have dried ink blocking a nozzle half. Okay? And that will be much more difficult to get it out. By the way, word of advice, when you replace a printhead in your printer, always order and replace new data cables as well. They don't cost you much, a couple of euro, but you will have at least a spare set of data cables on the side. They tend to misbehave very badly, and they tend to be broken or not connected correctly easily as well. You can have a second type of nozzle deflection where the nozzles are not all over the place. They just look strange, okay? And you do a normal cleaning, and the second nozzle test still looks the same. So that's dust or debris, but not on the nozzle face. It's inside your printhead, okay? It might be a damaged printhead surface, which in this particular case is usually the case, or the head gap is too high, okay? And when the head gap, in this particular case, is too high, you will get some satellites and mist, okay? So if it's too high, your drops don't fall on the correct place. You don't have a correct drop placement, right? And then we have this one, which is an eaten nozzle test. So you print your nozzle tests, and where there should be nice full lines, only half the line or even less is shown. You do a normal cleaning, and it stays the same, right? Again, 90% here, data cable. If it's not a data cable, it's a headboard or a mainboard issue. But in any case, it is an electrical issue, all right? So either your data cable, headboard, or the mainboard. Headboard is sometimes called carriage board as well, depending on the brand of your printer. Right. Then we have a completely missing nozzle test. You print your nozzle test and all the colors are there, and there's one color completely missing. So you do a normal cleaning and it's still missing. If it's completely missing and you do a normal cleaning and it starts to come back, air, all right? And you either purge your ink lines manually with this and your head as well, or you keep on doing normal cleanings until the nozzle test is perfect again. If you do it, or if you have it that it is completely missing, normal cleaning, still completely missing, it's an electrical problem. Again, looking at the data cable, the head or carriage board, and the main board. It might be an ink delivery issue, but that would mean that the entire color or channel doesn't get to the printhead. Might be possible if your damper is completely blocked. Then it might be possible. And the last thing in this particular case, it might be about printheads. If you know how printheads operate, uh, they, they, they are fragile, like I said, and sensitive, but they are very straightforward and simple technology. And to get a printhead that is bad, you should have something like overcurrent on one of the connectors damaging the board that takes care of the nozzles, so that takes care of the piezo element to uh, how do you say extract and go back, so it shoots out and an ink drop. So usually it's overcurrent, and then you have a bad printhead. You don't get printheads that don't print, for instance, at all, or print only one channel, and then a day later they print everything again. Then it wasn't your printhead. Okay? When a printhead is bad, when this is damaged, it's done. And when this is damaged, you won't have anything colored. You won't have any color on your nozzle test. Okay? So air, like we saw in some of the cases where we have missing nozzles, is one of the enemies of any modern large format printer. And we're gonna take a brief look on how we can deal with that. Call it the battle with air. So the first thing you do is you check your ink cartridge. You wouldn't be the first one that has an empty ink cartridge. Normally your printer should tell you, but you never know. Also, when you check the ink cartridge, there's a valve on the ink cartridge, which its only function is to make sure that ink is flowing in one direction. Okay? If that is misbehaving or broken, then it might introduce some air into your ink delivery system. You can perform several normal cleanings if you see that it is air, but like I already explained to you, it's much better to use the printhead cleaning kit, unscrew the damper and use it on your ink lines. You will waste a lot less ink doing it like this, and you actually will see what's going on in your ink lines. You will see the bubbles coming to your syringe and going into the syringe. You can check for leaks at the capping station, meaning that the rubber isn't sealing properly anymore. Replace it. Check the pumps for broken tubes. Check the printhead for air bubbles. Checking a printhead for air bubbles. So if on the nozzle face you do a normal cleaning, all right, and you look at the nozzle face and you see just bubbles of half transparent ink on there, then you might still have air in your printhead. Check the ink tubes, of course, and check the condition of the dampers. That's the first thing that you do. This is just a recap of what I said, how you get the air out of the ink tubes with a printhead cleaning kit and get the air out of the printhead. All right. Small word on data cables. You replace them when you replace a printhead, or at least you disconnect them and connect them when you replace a printhead. And they're very easy to connect in a bad way. They're not straight down, or they're not connected, especially here. They just curl a little bit in the corner. The thickness of a flat cable is around between 20 or 50 micron, depending on the cable. So it's easy to actually bend it or curl it in any direction. The cable, if you inspect your data cables and you have nozzle out, and we have seen that sometimes the data cable can be the culprit. So you inspect your data cable, you can see that it is damaged at the sides. If it is damaged like this, it will be hard to fit it exactly where it needs to fit on a connector like this. Maybe a contact came loose. Maybe the contact points on the connector are not positioned in the center of the cable contact. That means that you have a bad data cable. Very rare, but it can happen. Or the contacts are not aligned properly anymore, so they don't connect to the correct pin in the connector here. Right? But in general, like I said, always make sure that you have a set of extra data cables on the side, especially when you replace a printhead. there's some tools that you can use when you have dried ink in your printhead, cleaning or normal cleaning when you have dried ink in your printhead. That won't help you. So you need something that can actually loosen that ink or dissolve that ink. And this is the ultrasonic cleaner that you can use. It uses ultrasonic waves to lightly vibrate the parts of a nozzle face and vibrate, of course, also the dried ink in order to lose it. If you use this on an Epsom head, we always recommend to run it in short cycles. Don't leave the ultrasonic on with an Epsom head for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, because that might damage your head. If you use more sturdy heads, like Psycho or Spectra heads or Konica, you can leave it on for half an hour and it won't do anything for your head. Printhead cleaning kits, we already saw that. Especially when you replace a head, you should have it as well, because any heads or most heads have either a transport liquid inside of them, or they have a testing fluid inside of them, which is of course not a solvent ink. It's a fluid that was inserted into the head to print the first nozzle test when it comes out of the factory, and you want to flush that out, and it's very easy flushing it out with this tool. By the way, we call that priming a head. But also, it's very handy, as I told you, to prime just about anything on your printer, printhead and ink lines. Okay, so go back to here. Here, right, and I will now open the chat, so it should be enabled, and I'm ready to listen to your questions and hope that I can answer them. Chat is open. So a lot of people starting to type, so we wait. Hi, Juan Carlos. You have a question for me, Juan? You have a couple of questions. That's always good. A wiper rubber blade. I don't have an example here with me. If you look at your maintenance station, I don't know what printer you have, but every printer has a wiper rubber blade. So if you look at your maintenance station, there's usually a cap, and on the side of it, connected to the pump, there's a little rubber blade that moves out and goes over your head after you did a normal cleaning. So it actually wipes the head, much like in your car on your windscreen, where you have a wiper cleaning your windscreen. That's your wiper rubber blade. Sometimes it's a felt blade, and sometimes it's a combination of both of them. And the function is to clean any ink off the printhead after a normal cleaning. Tricky question. Could you wipe your printhead with a rubber tool? In theory, yes. I would not advise to do that, but yes, you could do that if you have the correct rubber and if you do it with the correct pressure, under the correct angle, etc., etc. Now, the wiper blade is installed in your printer just to do that, to do it in the correct way, correct speed, correct pressure, under the correct angle. You can get banding for many reasons, Manfred. It could be the printhead if it's irregular white lines, or if there is a complete color actually missing in your print, then yes, it's the printhead. But it could also be that the step is wrong, and then you'll see some type of banding as well. or on UV printers, it might be reflective banding, which has to do with the curing. So not always, but it can be. Right, overspray, Nikos, depending on which printer and which media you print, it can have a wide range of possible causes. It can be static electricity if you print on vinyl, especially on UV printers, you will see that. It might be that you don't see any mist or overspray in your nozzle test, right? Yeah, exactly, Peter. Clancy, which I doubt is your real name. No, if you use an ultrasonic that is used in jewelry shops, um, they are usually just a bath with liquid that vibrates. Our ultrasonic keeps only the nozzle face in there. So if you would use a tool like that, it would mean that you have to throw the entire head in there. Also, you can't usually take care of the temperature of the cleaning liquid, and you can't take care of the time the ultrasonic will be active. So no. Because I will come back to you. Yes, SAR in their official documentation does not recommend using ultrasonic cleaning. Um, for various reasons. Will it kill your head using an ultrasonic cleaner on a SAR head? Absolutely not. The reason why a SAR doesn't recommend it is because it's often not used in the correct way. However, if you follow the instructions that come with an ultrasonic cleaner like ours, you would be fine. And by the way, their own cleaner more or less does the same. So yes, Juan. Both the Konica Minolta KM512 or 1024 and UV inks, you can use the ultrasonic. Robert, reverse cleaning with an ultrasonic. Well, sometimes you don't have any other option. When you have dried ink inside the head, then it's the only way to get it out. You don't want to push this dried ink through the nozzle face. Um, so it can work, but I still find it tricky because the head is not designed to have any liquid or ink flowing that direction. But sometimes you need to. Nikos, can I ask you to send an email to tech, T-E-C-H, at digiprint-supplies.com, or just open a ticket on Zendesk? I feel that I won't have the time needed to answer your particular question, but we're more than happy to look into it and to help you with your overspray issue. Thank you. I'm reading your question, Peter. So GV33, so you have a DX5, lines in magenta. What I would try in this particular case is to connect one of these to the magenta's channel and then push some cleaning liquid through it and see that every one of these 180 well sorry 180 nozzles actually has liquid going through. That will already tell you if these nozzles are blocked by dry ink or something like that. If they are all open and you can see a nice curtain of cleaning liquid going through them, it might be that either there's something wrong with the data cable or that the nozzles are simply dead. Um, just like about any part in your printer involved in the printing process, these don't have eternal life. They need to replace from time to time. I can, Nico, just like this. There you go. Thanks, Marco. Same goes for your problem, Pradeep, is to see if the nozzles are open when you push manually cleaning liquid through them. You can't use a kit like this when you do that. You actually can, but you can, but not with the damper. So you can connect this directly to the ink line. Or even better, if you use a CleanSonic device and you put the lift in the highest position, and then you run it, not the ultrasonic, just the flushing function of it, you will see if every nozzle is actually allowing liquid to go through. If that is the case, then again you need to look at the delivery, both the electrical and the ink delivery side of it. Thank you, Luciano. Thank you, Zivko. The KM5012 has a very small damper inside, yeah. How do you clean them? By running cleaning liquid through them. They're not replaceable parts on the Konica 5012. And it's not technically correct to say that it's a very little, it's like more like an ink reservoir, okay? So the delivery with a Konica ink printhead is much different than in the case of an Epson one or a Psycho or a Ricoh one. The ultrasonic cleaner, I don't know by heart the price of it, but you can see it on a website. And once the webinar is done, you will be taken to a page where you can see our CleanSonic and also where you can see these kits and the maintenance kits. Thank you, Nikos. Thank you, Jens. Still some questions coming in. We'll wait for that. Thank you very much. So when you print your nozzle test, Lieslot, your nozzles look fine, but they're misfiring on the top and the bottom. What do you mean with misfiring? They're not there, they are deflected, they look strange. Might be so Pelican that in this particular case, where all nozzles are open, the cables, tubes, etc. You check that they're great. You even replace them, and you still have missing nozzles or an issue with these with this particular printhead. Then it might be something with the printhead itself. And in this case, I would advise you to talk to our support people, which you can find at the email address I already typed in the chat window, or even better, go to our website. Click on technical support in the right-hand corner, and you'll get to our support website, which is, by the way, the place where you can watch this webinar and any previous webinar again, where you can find information on how to replace print heads, on how to maintain your printer, and where you find our ticket system, where you can open a ticket and get in direct contact with our support people. Yes, Ian, like I said, you can see it again. Okay, questions coming so fast that I can't read them all anymore. So I'll just try to do it like this. Sorry about that. Maybe Robert. Peter. Exactly, Peter. That's what I pointed out in the beginning as well. Please do your maintenance, and it takes 5, maximum 10 minutes every day, but it will expand the life of any part in your printer, your printhead, and your printer itself, of course. But also, don't be shabby and replace whatever is considered to be a consumable, dampers and wipers. Replace them on a regular basis. The HP 9000. That will be tricky, Rob. To recover a printhead in a printer that was half year down, and not only your printhead, you probably have to replace your ink lines. It might be dried ink in there as well. There's no way to get that absolutely perfectly clean. And if you think it's clean, it's still going to release small particles of that dried ink into your ink line, into your dampers, into your printhead for months to come. So in that particular case, if you want to use this HP 9000 design jet again, please replace the printhead, replace the ink lines, replace everything involved in the ink delivery system. Yes, Barbara, you can watch it again. It will be online this afternoon on our support website. You will receive an email after this webinar, thank you, and also with a link where you can see it again, and also with some special promotions. That's a very peculiar problem you have, Lieselot. Can I advise you as well to contact our support team, open a ticket on Zendesk, or email to tech@digiprint-supplies.com. Juan, you can see previous webinars on our support website. So you go to our website, digiprint-supplies.com. You log in like you would place an order or anything. And once you're logged in, you click on technical support. It's one of the 3 big buttons on the right-hand corner next to chat, I believe. And you will end up on our support website. And there's a section there entitled videos. And inside videos, there's a section called webinars. And there you have an entire list of all the webinars we have done since the beginning. Yep, Nikos, that's what I also pointed out during the webinar. Konica, Psycho, Spectra, if you use that in an ultrasonic, they're very robust heads, very different than an Epson head. And you can use it ultrasonic as much as you want. But if you use an Epson head in an ultrasonic, you need to be careful and run short cycles of ultrasonic waves through them. Also trying to avoid the reverse flushing on Epson heads is just too sensitive. But don't forget that the ultrasonic device is not only for ultrasonic, it also allows you to flush a printhead. If you need to do a lot of flushing and you use this, then you're going to have to disconnect a lot of it. This head can be placed in an ultrasonic device like the one we have, and you can flush it for 3 hours if you want to. See. Okay, guys, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm sure I couldn't answer all the questions. There was just so many. But please stay in touch with us. Send us an email at tech, and I'll just type it again, tech@digiprint-supplies.com without errors. I forgot the E. Like this. Or webinar at digiprint-supplies.com. Connect through our Facebook page on our Zendesk support website. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope to see you again the next month when we do our next webinar. Thank you very much. Cheers.